I've been no contact with my mother for over 30 years. 17 years into the no contact, my mother showed up at my door, unannounced, uninvited, with zero warning, just out of the blue. Didn't see it coming. And this is a comment that somebody left on a video where I'm talking about that. And I will expand on exactly what went down. But first, I would like to read the comment. So let's get into it, shall we? It sounds that it's all about you. To concern how she might felt to had the courage to come around after such a long time. Parents aren't perfect, but this generation of young people is egotistic. Your happiness is above. No empathy for the last generation. Okay, so I don't know who you are, obviously, and I don't think, based on your comment, that you understand how narcissism works or what narcissistic abuse looks like. So I'm going to take this opportunity to give you some background and education. Narcissistic abusers, my mother is a sociopath and a narcissist. And it's always all about her, by the way. And she didn't need to work up the courage to show up unannounced and blindside me. Where's the empathy in that? She took an opportunity to invade my space uninvited, without warning, to gain control over me again, to get her claws back into me. She was doing one of these like, oh, here we go. Because that's how narcissistic abusers work. This isn't somebody who is estranged from their daughter, who they love, who they passed down trauma to, and made some mistakes and did some things and were ready to take ownership and embrace and love and care for. This is not that. And on the note of, how this generation is operating, this generation has information and tools that I had no access to because I've been no contact for over 30 years, long before the internet. What about my generation that went no contact? There's more of us than people think. And we had to do it without all the tools that are available today. And the reason it's happening today in a different way at an earlier age is because of the education that this generation is lucky to have. They're able to go to therapy sooner, and it's actually supported instead of stigmatized. Oh, you're going to a shrink. That's what it was like for me when I was 17 years old. Oh, you're going to a shrink. My mother weaponized that to manipulate me out of not going to therapy. This generation has an understanding that they don't have to stay connected to people who are abusive, even if it's their parent, and they have a support system in doing that. And I wish that I had had that way back when. It would have saved me and my children exposure, or more exposure, to my mother. It would have given me the understanding that my mother is a really messed up individual, and the way she treated me was not actually my fault. I had a relationship with my mother when my children were small. I gave my mother access to my children. I wanted them to have a grandmother. I wanted to have a mom. I wanted that relationship. What ended it was my mother consistently, constantly weaponizing my children against me, against each other, against their step-grandfather. My daughter told me later that she learned to feel guilty from my mother because my mother treated her like she was the only person in the universe. My daughter, 5, 6 years old, the golden child. And she would ignore, absolutely ignore, when I wasn't there particularly, my younger son, and feed my older daughter and give her treats and do all these things. My daughter said she felt guilty for how she treated everybody else and didn't understand why she wasn't nice to everybody else the way she was nice to her. There were a lot of things going on in terms of how my mother was weaponizing my children that created the necessity for no contact. I tried to get my mother to stop behaving that way. I begged her, I asked her, I talked to her. I never asked her not to treat me the way she was treating me. I never said to her, don't speak to me that way. I actually said things like, please, like in front of the kids, can you not talk to me that way? Because I don't want them to see that. Not, don't talk to me that way. Because I thought I was deserving of the way that she was treating me. That's why I had to go no contact. It wasn't about the past abuse that she was never going to acknowledge. It was about what was happening in the present day. So fast forward. My daughter ended up going to university in Miami, and that's where my mother lived. And at the time I was living in Central Florida. My daughter sought my mother out, my grandmother, because she had fond memories of them and she wanted that family connection. And I didn't love it, but I was okay with it. I also understood that my mother was going to try to hurt our relationship. And I had to have the faith in the relationship that I built with my daughter, in the time that I had with her, to teach her that she had the right and the ability to make her own decisions, which she then went and did. I gave her those skills and tools. So who was I to stand in the way or take them away from her? The only thing that I asked of my daughter was, don't share things about me with my mother and vice versa. I don't want you in the middle. I don't need to know what's going on or anything like that. And my daughter completely respected that. And then my daughter was pregnant with my first grandchild. And my mother was going to be in the hospital. So I'm not really sure how it came about that my mother found me, because I don't know that my daughter shared my address. I never asked her. I don't need to ask her. I never want her to feel bad for that sort of thing. So like that's dusted and done. Why it happened, how it happened doesn't really matter. The fact is my mother wasn't working up courage. She was capitalizing on an opportunity. She showed up at my door and I was immediately transformed back into being a 9-year-old child, stunned, fawning, freezing, freaking out, all on the inside. My mother walks into my house. She sits down on my couch. I sit, I get up, I offer something to drink. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm barely breathing. I can feel my heartbeat and I'm barely breathing. And I'm kind of studying my mother in a couple of different ways. One, in the way that I did when I was 9 to keep myself safe. Instinct kicked right in. 2, freaking out over her face because it was so frozen with Botox that nothing was moving except for her lips, and barely that. And maybe the facelift she probably had. And look, no shade to people having Botox and facelifts. I have Botox. No shade on that. But there's a point and there's a point. And her face was not moving, which made it look like a mask. How appropriate. And made me feel more uncomfortable because it was expressionless. And then add in her very black eyes, like black, very dark, no expression. And so I can't get a beat or a read on why she's there and what's going to happen next. Anyway, she gets up, she goes into my bathroom. Immediately, 9-year-old little Marnie, are the towels folded correctly? Oh my God, what does it look like under the sink? Is everything, are the labels facing front? Are the bottles like by size? Is everything clean? Is there dust? Is there something behind the door on the floor? Because she used to make me like clean the floors and then I swear to you, plant dust behind the doors as if like I wasn't cleaning the floors properly to scream at me and berate me and all of that. And I know she did that because I would pay special attention to those spots and make sure that they were clean. So immediately, 9-year-old little Marnie is completely freaking out. It seems like it's taking her an eternity in the bathroom. And guess what? She comes out. She was all up in my cabinets. And she says, I see that you keep the bathroom the way that I taught you. That's it. And I'm like, 9-year-old little Marnie going, everything is going to be okay. My mother approves of me. Like, I felt like she was proud of me in that moment. P.S. After that moment, I never went to such great lengths to organize my cabinets and all that in that same way. Yes, I still fold my towels in a particular way, but it's because I like the organization and the aesthetic. I think all the way up until that point in time, I was breaking myself, like busting myself, killing myself to keep my house in the way that I did because of the fear of that very moment. It's so bizarre. Look at the hold that my mother had over me. 17 years, no contact. And look what a stronghold she had over me. But hey, I should give her empathy and think about her. Sure, sure. Mind-blowing to me. So now let's fast forward a little bit. My grandchildren are being born. And I see my mother several more times. We have lunch all together as a family. I have a new stepfather. I met them all after she married them, this one being no exception, but at least this one, it made sense because I wasn't in a relationship with her. By the way, he was lovely. Unfortunately, he's one of the 3 husbands that have passed away being married to my mother out of 5. 2 escaped with their lives. Anyway, we go to lunch and my mother's like, oh, can I take pictures? She's taking pictures. Oh, Stephen wants to see what you look like. My brother, who I am deeply wounded over at that time. I wanted him in my life so badly. He and my aunt, my favorite aunt, were really the only ones that I cared about, that I really wanted a relationship with, that I had so much love for. So she knew that. She, again, weaponized it because we never had a phone conversation. Like, she made it seem like, oh, we'll all be speaking and hanging out and be a family now and all of that, when she never had the intention of allowing that to happen. She was just using that moment as a show and tell. I don't even know that my brother got the pictures. I'm thinking she took those pictures to show other people how she's willing to make amends and what a good person she is. Because that's what narcissistic parents do. And then the lights go down. And what do I mean by that? Well, the last time that I saw my mother before we parted, she hugged me in front of the audience of all the people that were there. My daughter, my son-in-law at the time, now ex-son-in-law, who, by the way, has a relationship with her, but my daughter doesn't. Relationship. I mean, he sees her, I think, a few times a year. And has tried to offer my grandchildren up to her, but they don't want to see her. So that's off the table. That's how deeply these types of people can get their claws into people, by the way. He knows everything my mother has done and still is in that relationship. Anyway, she hugs me in front of my son-in-law, my daughter, her husband, whoever else was there. I don't know that anybody else was there, but there was a show about it. And she holds me and it feels good. I'm in my mother's arms. That is a rare treat. 17 years no contact and I'm all back in. Little Marnie is like, oh my God, this is everything we've ever wanted and dreamed of. She says, I love you. Do you want to have a relationship? Wow, I didn't expect that to strike a chord. And of course, bobblehead, here we go. Yes, yes, of course I do. Do you want to try? Yes, yes, I want to try. I want my mommy. When we go no contact, it isn't that we don't want a relationship with our parents. It's that we can't have a relationship with those kinds of parents because they hurt us, because they weaponize love against us, because we cannot be healthy, happy, grounded human beings in those relationships where they are constantly stimulating the wounds that they put there. We can't. We can't do both things. It's impossible to live a life in safety when you're on fire. And they are constantly lighting matches and setting us on fire. So here I am, forgetting that she has a box of matches in her back pocket. My mother leaves, I leave, and a few days goes by. And guess who musters up the courage to call her mom? Or who she thinks is going to be her mom, because I usually refer to her as mother for a reason. She was never a mom. And I leave her a voicemail. Hey, I hope that when you come back next time, we can spend some time just the girls. We can go to lunch, have some fun, maybe do a little shopping. I'm really looking forward to seeing you. And I just want to let you know, now here's where I'm fawning and building safety for my abuser. We never have to talk about any of the past ever, ever. We can just build a relationship moving forward. I feel so sad for how desperate I was for her love, for that girl. And you have the audacity to come on here and talk about who had courage. Abusers are cowards. They're victim survivors who choose to find healing and build a life. They are the people who are filled with courage, even when they can't find it. The abusers are cowards. There's no bigger coward than somebody who can hurt their own child, their vulnerable, helpless child. Oh, well, maybe she didn't get the message because I never heard from her. Do you know why? Because there wasn't going to be an audience. I invited her out, just her and I. There was no opportunity in there for her, no payoff in there for her. I know she got the message, and I'm not going to say how I know. She never returned my call. If she had a relationship with me, how could she continue to play the victim of me? Before you go around making comments on people's pages, take a moment and watch some more content and educate yourself. There are different reasons for estrangements. That's absolutely true. They do kind of fall into some categories. So there's estrangement because of child abuse, and that abuse continues into adulthood, meaning that abuser never stops and they will never heal and they will never take accountability because they are actually narcissistic. There's estrangements because the children raised in that environment or who have been abused in regular child abuse, because narcissistic abuse is not regular child abuse. It's layered, it's constant, it's methodical, and it involves the entire family. It's a narcissistic family system. There's a cult involved. But the regular child abuse, I hate to put it that way because I don't want to invalidate the gravity of child abuse. The impact is the same in terms of it's all horrific. The children who are raised in that, who stay connected to those family systems, oftentimes lose their children to those family systems. Or they married into that family system because that's the love they know. They lose their children to that narcissistic family system when that marriage eventually dissolves and that ex has spun that child out or children. They lose them because we pass down trauma and we parent from that place and don't understand the decisions we're making are not for the best interest of our children. Or maybe we do understand it, but we're not keyed in the way that you would be if you were raised in a family that gave you a good and healthy roadmap of how to be a parent, how not to pass down trauma in such an extraordinary way that you damage your relationship with your children. I did that, by the way. I created damage in my relationships with all of my children at different times. I passed down trauma. My coping mechanisms negatively impacted my children. Interesting how I'm no longer estranged, because the parents who pass down trauma are also the parents who are seeking to do better, who have a conscience, who have empathy, and the ability to take ownership and heal those relationships. And because the love outweighed the passing down of trauma, because it wasn't intentional abuse that was done, with that sort of consistency that happens with true child abusers. I'm sure there's some other reasons in there as well, mental health issues. Having a child who is schizophrenic, for example, that's going to cause an estrangement. That's going to cause all sorts of problems. The majority, though, of the estrangements, the ones that last, are due to being raised by parents or within families that are narcissistic family systems. So know the facts before you comment. Educate yourself. And I hope that this video has been eye-opening for you. And if it hasn't, it hasn't. I know it will be for someone. Have a nice day. And thank you for your comment. In spite of the fact that I don't agree with it and I didn't like it, I still thank you for taking the time to comment, because you've given me the opportunity to help somebody through this type of commentary that we hear all too often. And for everybody else out there, I'm, as I've said in a few of my videos, going to be taking a lot more time to respond to comments, not just comments like these ones, but also questions, things that you need help with. So please do take the time to comment, and I will get to you as soon as I can. Have a great day, everybody. Much love to you, and thank you for all the love that you show me.